Are you thinking about buying a condo in Chicago? Well, you wouldn't be alone. Almost 2/3 of all single-family homes sold in the city of Chicago are attached condos and townhouses versus detached houses. While buying a condo is usually simpler than buying a house or a multifamily building in terms of the property itself, there are quite a few things to keep in mind when narrowing in on your dream condo. Whether it's a high-rise box in the sky or a garden unit of a 3-flat, this is the only video you'll need to watch to be armed with all the info that you need to navigate your next move. In fact, I'll be going into the top 7 things that you will need to know if you're interested in buying or even selling a condo in Chicago. My name is Jake Lyons, realtor right here in Chicago with @Properties, bringing you well-informed, data-driven content as always. If you're in the market and need some guidance, you can book a call with me using the Calendly link in the description below. I'd be happy to help. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first tip I will give is to understand your financing and the variables that impact you. Assuming that you're not paying all cash, the first thing you'll need to do is to talk to a lender about getting pre-approved for a mortgage. This will help you know what price range that you should actually be looking in, because even if you know that you could afford a certain amount, there is a difference between the number that you know in your heart that you could afford and the number that a bank is actually willing to bet that you can afford over the course of the next 15 to 30 years. And unfortunately, that second number is the only one that really matters. Now, once you get that number, know that there are many variables which could impact your actual monthly payments, such as HOA fees, which we'll get into in more detail next, taxes, and insurance, among other potential things like maintenance costs. If you're using an FHA or a VA loan to finance your condo, make sure the building you're buying in is on the list of approved buildings for those programs. If it isn't, you can apply to get it on there and can usually still move forward with the deal, but there will be a couple more hoops that you'll need to jump through first, and it might just take a little longer to close. As long as you're working with an experienced lender and all parties are on the same page, this shouldn't be more than a minor inconvenience. Tip number 2 is a big one: understanding your HOA dues. So the Homeowners Association, or HOA dues, will also commonly be referred to as your assessment, and is the amount of money owed to the HOA each month in order to maintain the building. HOA dues vary widely across the city depending on what kind of building it is, whether the building is self-managed or run by a management company, what kind of amenities the building needs to maintain, how old the building is, and many other variables. HOA dues can range anywhere from $100 a month to literally thousands of dollars per month. So obviously it's very important to know how much your assessment is and what that includes and what you're actually paying for. Almost every HOA is going to include things like your basic water, common area maintenance, snow removal, garbage removal, or scavenger as it's referred to on most real estate listings, and common insurance, which is not to be confused with your personal homeowner's insurance. Sometimes your HOA will also cover things like gas, electric, internet, and cable, although that's a little less common. From there, it just depends on the type of building. If it's a bigger high-rise type of building, then there might be things like a door person, security system, on-site management, an elevator, a pool, gym, business center, a dog walk, all kinds of other amenities like that the residents are chipping in for. And as you might expect, this will normally come with a higher price on the HOA fee. Though there are exceptions to everything, smaller buildings in like the 3 to 12 unit range that don't have a ton of extra amenities are usually on the lower end, which I would describe as somewhere in like the $150 to $400 a month range, while bigger buildings that are more complex to maintain and have more amenities usually have higher HOA fees, which I would describe as somewhere in the very broadly the $500 to $900 range or higher. How much your share of the fees are within a building is up to the HOA to determine, but usually things like your unit size and floor level would determine how much your dues are compared to your neighbors. Another huge consideration regarding the HOA is how much money they have in reserves. A portion of the residents' HOA fees should be saved in a reserve fund to pay for repairs or improvements as they come up in the building, such as let's say like a new roof, or perhaps replacing a sun deck or repaving a parking lot. If something comes up and the building doesn't have enough reserves to cover the cost, then there may be what's called a special assessment, where each of the building's residents are essentially required to contribute a certain amount of money towards the project. Depending on the scope of the project in question, this could be anywhere from a few $100s to many thousands of dollars. There's really no limit on it that might be required of each residence, and obviously this is not ideal. So if you're thinking about purchasing a condo, always ask what the reserves are and make sure that there aren't any specials coming up. If there are, see if the seller will pay it before closing, or just make sure that you're planning ahead for it and know what you're getting yourself into. There's really no one-size-fits-all answer as to how much a building should have in reserves. It depends on many factors, including the building's age, size, the materials that it's actually made out of, recent projects and renovations, the number of units in the building, among countless other things. Just make sure that you're working with a professional who knows how to evaluate things like that. The third topic I would like to get into is to make sure that you understand your taxes, okay? So taxes are fairly straightforward. My main point here is just to make sure you understand to the best of your ability what your taxes will actually be. When you see the taxes that are quoted on a real estate listing, it's important to remember that the number shown is usually what the owner paid 1 to 2 years ago, as that is often the most recent tax data available, because Cook County taxes are paid in arrears and is also known to be a step behind, especially more so recently. This is why when we go to write an offer, it's customary to have a tax proration of 105 to 110% of the last known tax amount, just in case the actual taxes in the most recent year that you would be partly responsible for are higher than what is listed, and to make sure that there is enough in escrow to cover it. If you have no idea what I just said, don't worry, that's a little beyond the scope of this video, and someday I'll have an attorney on here to go over things like that in more detail. But I just wanted to kind of plant a little bit of a seed right there. Another thing I want you to watch out for is tax exemptions. So sometimes you may come across a property with taxes that are listed at considerably lower amounts than other places around it, and it might seem a little too good to be true. When this happens, look to see if there were any tax exemptions that enabled that seller to pay a lower property tax amount than they otherwise would have. The most common exemptions are the homeowner's exemption, the senior exemption, and a senior freeze. But there are other exemptions for things like home improvement, disabled veterans, other people with disabilities, and probably more that I don't even know about. The next topic I like to get into is just to know your amenities. Amenities are a big deal when looking for a condo in Chicago. Amenities can play a large role in shopping for condos, especially in some of the more centrally located downtown neighborhoods of Chicago, like the Loop, River North, West Loop, South Loop, and so on. Many of the downtown high-rises will feature everything from door staff, package handling, security, valet service, to things like a gym, pool, business center, a dog walk, a roof deck, golf simulators, whatever, you know. As you get further from the downtown high-rises, those types of amenities become a little less common as the building simply gets smaller, although things like gyms, security systems, and common area roof decks can still be found. The main point here is just to know what you're looking for and what you'll actually use and be willing to pay for. It's always amazing to me when I'm touring these buildings with high-end swimming pools and gyms and saunas and all kinds of other crazy things, and nobody's ever using them. So I would just advise, don't be that person. If you're in a building that has these things, you're probably paying a hefty HOA fee for them, so you might as well enjoy them and have the whole place to yourself, most likely. The next topic is renting out your condo and knowing the rules of your HOA when it comes to renting out your condo. It seems like not a week goes by where I don't have to let someone down from their hopes and dreams of owning a downtown Chicago condo, or anywhere in Chicago really, that they can visit every once in a while, rent it out on Airbnb the rest of the time, and unfortunately this really just is not a thing in Chicago anymore. The hotel industry lobbyists have firmly put the right Chicago politicians in their pockets. Chicago politicians have listened to the people in these various areas who have apparently complained of their buildings and neighborhoods being overrun by out-of-towners not respecting where they're staying. It is now all but impossible these days to just casually have an Airbnb listing unless it's your primary residence and you're renting it out part-time. You can still rent out many condos the old-fashioned way, however. You just need to know what your HOA's specific rules are. Some HOAs don't allow rentals at all, though that is relatively uncommon. What is much more common is for the building to have what they call a cap. So that means it can be only a certain amount can be rented out at any one time, usually somewhere in the range of 20 to 30% of the units in the building. Sometimes there may be a requirement that the unit has been owner occupied for a specific amount of time. 2 years is a common number that I see for that kind of requirement. If your building is already at its rental cap, then you'll have to go on a wait list before you can rent out your unit. Some buildings don't have any rental cap at all, which can sound like a good thing, but you may run into issues with financing if the type of loan you're working with doesn't like buildings with more than a certain amount of renters versus, homeowners. This would be a question for your lender. The next topic I'm getting into is a big one, maybe the biggest one, and that is determining the value of your condo. Like all residential real estate, the value of a condo is largely, if not entirely, based on how it compares to other properties that are most similar to it. What we in the biz like to call comps, with particular weight given to comps that have sold over comps that are still on the market, or even ones that have accepted an offer but haven't closed yet because we don't know what the actual price that it's closing at is yet. The more recent the sold comp, the better. Now, no matter what anyone tells you, determining the value of a property is part science and part art. While it's in theory based on objective numbers, there is still an element of subjectivity when it comes to what things the evaluator or appraiser is prioritizing. Where it all starts for me when I'm analyzing a property is bedroom and bathroom counts, size, age, proximity, and time frame. If, for example, the subject property is a 2-bed, 1-bath condo in a 12-unit building, then a 2-bed, 1-bath condo that sold 8 months ago in the same building is still probably a better comp than a 2-bed, 1-bath condo that sold 4 blocks away in a 3-unit building, even if it only sold 2 months ago. However, that condo that was sold 4 blocks away is probably still a better comp than let's say a 4-bed, 2-bath condo that just sold in the same building, because that at that point is just a much different product. You can feel free to rewind that and listen to it again a couple times if you didn't get all that. This may seem like common sense, but you'd be surprised at how people see what's happening around them and come up with ideas of what their place is worth based on ultimately irrelevant data. From there, we move on to comparing more secondary features like the presence or absence of laundry machines, parking spots. Within the parking spots, are they garage or exterior spots, or no spots at all? If the comp had a parking spot, was it included in the price, or was that spot sold separately as a deeded spot? Finishes like hardwood versus laminate versus carpet, or marble counters versus quartz or granite. Central AC or window units, outdoor spaces like balconies and roof decks. Gas or electric cooking, what the view is like, what level the condo is on. That one is especially important in the downtown high-rises. And just about any other feature that could stand out about the subject property for better or worse. From there, you just see what all is out there that either has or doesn't have the features of the subject property and estimate the value that should be added or subtracted from the subject property based on the presence or absence of that feature and make your adjustments. That's a lot. That was a big mouthful there, but for example, let's say you determine from other comps that the presence of a balcony adds $50,000 to a property's value. So if the subject property does not have one, then you would discount $50,000 from the sold price of the closest comp that did have one and arrive at that value. Rinse and repeat until you've exhausted all of the relevant features you are accounting for and have arrived at what you believe to be a fair value. That, in summary, is how it's done. This process is simple, but it is not easy. It takes a certain amount of specialized tools and specific market knowledge to do it correctly, so much so that an assigned appraiser for a property has to meet certain criteria of demonstrated knowledge in the area before they are even allowed to perform an appraisal there, which makes sense, right? So when you're looking for an agent to work with on either the buy side or the sell side, this is arguably the most important skill to look for in a real estate professional. And oh, by the way, did I mention that I am a National Association of Realtors certified pricing strategy advisor? Just saying. The last topic I'd like to get into is Things to look for during an inspection. The home inspection for a condo can often feel like more of a formality than inspections on houses and multifamily properties, because in theory there's just less that can go wrong. And you don't have to worry about things like the exterior or the roof or sump pumps or leaks in the basements or sewer lines or a whole host of other things that come up in other types of properties. Not that these things should be ignored per se, because they still impact the building you live in, and you should make sure that the building has the ability to handle these things, but they're typically not, your individual responsibility, right? Still though, you should always get a professional inspection done, because you just never know what you might find. Operational failures on electricity, plumbing, gas, windows that have blown their argon gas seals, loose toilet bowls, other safety hazards, and just all kinds of things that might come up. Even if the items in question aren't necessarily deal breakers, bottom line is you're likely about to spend 6 or 7 figures on this home, so you might as well know everything about the asset you're purchasing as you possibly can, right? I think, in my opinion, skipping this step would be a very silly way to try to save a few $100 at this point. If you're looking into buying or selling real estate in the Chicago area, feel free to contact me directly or book a call with me via the Calendly link below. You can also go to thechicagohomesource.com, where you can see all the listings that are available in the area right now and get a conversation started with us that way.